Hey, what is up, everybody? It's your boy, Pigskin Pete, along with my co host and my friend, John from Always Irish. That's how you say it, right, John?
Yeah, you got it. That's
All
pretty
right.
good. You got to get that gravelly, always Irish.
Always Irish. All right, there you go. I think
I
I
don't know
got it
why I
right.
started doing that, but after I did it a few times, then people expected it, so I kept it.
Hey, I like it. It definitely sounds like an Irish guy. I mean,
It's
that's
different.
that's what you're going for there.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is episode number 3 of the Always Pigskin Show. That means that we have successfully banked 2 shows, which is a minor miracle in itself. So here we are for episode 3. Thank you all for joining us. We got a lot of fun stuff to talk about today, don't we, John?
Yeah, we do. We always have way too much to talk about for an hour. So which is good. Even with no football going on there, we could go on and on. So it's going to be another good one.
All right. So there's something you wanted to lead off with. I think you had some news or something you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. So okay. I keep hearing whenever I mention still being worried about the college football season and COVID, I get bombarded with people messaging me saying, these kids are young, they're in good shape. You don't even worry about it. I don't know why you're spending time talking about that. I get a ton of those messages or on my Twitter feed. And they're like, dude, why are you even talking about this? But then every day in the news, I'm hearing more and more of these athletes, college and pro, are testing positive. That's why I keep talking about it. Then, I don't know if you know who this is. Probably not. He's a Chicago Tribune writer, Teddy Greenstein. He used to do a bunch of Notre Dame coverage. Now he does a lot of Big Ten and golf stuff, and he's in the Chicago area.
Mm-hmm.
He put out a tweet yesterday saying the higher ups he's talked to in these administrations are saying it's a 50-50 toss up if they're even going to be able to go through with college football as it stands. And so my question is, what do we make of all this? Because depending on who you talk to, you get these various viewpoints that are like totally doomsday scenarios and other people saying, don't worry about it. And I just feel like there's mixed messages from all over. What do you think about all this?
I was asked this last night on my call-in show, and the guy asked me, if you had to put a percentage chance on what you think if whether or not we're going to have a normal season or not. I said 70-30. I think we will have a normal season. And like you said, there's depending on who you ask, there's a lot of different opinions about this. And these are people that are in the know. And I mean, people that are not like me and you, people that are in these meetings and communicating with each other. So like, for instance, I can only speak from what I know from Clemson. I'm more tuned into Clemson than anything else. So the athletic director for Clemson is a guy named Dan Radakovich. He says all systems go right, and Clemson's had some players test positive for COVID just in the past week, and he said all systems go for right now. What I think was going to happen, well, first of all, it's extremely difficult to predict 3 months out because 3 months ago we were all starting to shut down and everything was closed except for grocery stores and hospitals, basically, right? And so it's really hard to project 3 months from now. I still feel like they know that players and coaches and even students are going to test positive for the next couple of months, but I don't think that that's going to shut things down. Now, here's what might happen, though. It could affect fall practice. If you have a team where it runs through them in the early fall when they're starting practice, they're at an automatic disadvantage from a team who's going full practices. So I don't know how that'll work. I have heard that they have already canceled a few games. Now, not any Power 5 games or Notre Dame games, since they're not in the Power 5. but you know what I'm saying? They haven't. It's been like lower level FCS type games that have been canceled. And I don't even know if that's because of COVID or if it's just because of financial. Probably more financial than anything else is what I would guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the other thing that is the big moving factor in all this is it's hard to make one uniform policy to fit every geographical region in the country because some are almost in the clear, past their peak, never got a peak, and others are spiking now. So it's really impossible to have one set of standard. Here's how we're going to do. Like, the NBA is so much easier. You have total control over all your constituents. You put them in this bubble at Disney World and you say, here's what we're doing. That just isn't feasible for colleges. But it's just all these mixed messages. And every time I mention it's like, John, these guys are young and healthy. Don't worry about it. Well, isn't Zeke Elliott young and healthy? So I don't know. But when I read that tweet from Teddy Greenstein, it really got me thinking, I'm going to lose my mind if they pull the plug on this or blow it up, or they could even shorten this season. I think here's
the thing, though, like the NCAA appears not to want to have to control this. They pretty much bowed out of this whole deal. And they're like, we're leaving it up to the conferences, individual conferences, and individual schools. So the NCAA doesn't want to have anything to do with it. Now, if the Pac-12 decides they want to bow out in the season, of course that would affect college football, but that doesn't stop the SEC or the ACC or Notre Dame or whoever from playing if they want to play. Now, it will affect Notre Dame because they have to play a couple of Pac-12 schools. But could they fill those with another? I don't know. It is kind of a mess.
Yeah, it's a total mess. And here's the thing: who wants to be that conference or that first school or conference to say, you know what, we're going to bow out? We don't need all this money and all this revenue. We're going to sit this one out. And then nobody wants to do that. So you have to balance the health aspect of everybody involved with the financial aspect that these football machines are, right? And so I just don't know how this is going to go. Nobody wants to pull the plug. Nobody wants to be the first ones to do that. And then here's the caveat to that. If somebody did that, what would happen to the transfer portal? Is that a reason where guys could go, the hell with this? I'm out of here and I'm going to go play day one because it's my last year and I want to go do something. I'm going to get out of here and go play somewhere right away. Is that could that happen?
I guess that's something I didn't even think about. Yeah. And there's a lot of other ancillary things on the outside that get affected by all of this too, that you just don't think about. That's one of them.
Yeah. Like it just crossed my mind. If somebody did this with some advance notice, you would have a mass exodus of guys in their final year that want to go just play for their draft stock or for whatever. I don't know, but it's like, I'm just kind of on edge because this could go either way. And everybody's just like, okay, do what you're going to do with baseball, whatever. But everybody's banking that we're going to have college and pro football. Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot of mixed messages, unknown after unknown after unknown. You can plan for it, but everything can get scrapped and changed. So I guess we're just floating in no man land week to week.
I tend to believe so these universities, especially in Division I college football. Now, the ones that really might get affected are the FCS and Division II and III and that kind of thing. But Division I, let's say whatever, how many teams that is, 131 teams or something. They rely so heavily on football revenue. I think that they're almost like even if it does run a risk to the players and the staff and the students, they're willing to take that chance because the after effect of that could be devastating to the university as a whole because they rely on that money so much. Now, the NFL is a different story. Listen, the NFL is not going away. They could cancel the NFL season. They can pick it up in 2021 because those guys are billionaires, whether football is played or not. I'm talking about the owners. So that's not it. It's apples and oranges as far as the NFL and college football go.
Yeah. And the other thing I found interesting is, and I believe Ohio State's one of the teams that has done this, asked their athletes to sign a health waiver.
Yeah, I heard that.
Freeing the university from any liability if this runs through your locker room or whatever. And there's a lot of strong opinions from people smarter than me about, the power dynamic and structure in college football. Technically, they're already working for free labor, and then now you're not going to protect them for this. There's a lot of stuff here that could blow up or could just totally go away and burn off with this 95-degree heat. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the virus is going away necessarily. It's going to be a lot like the flu is. It's going to have different variations year to year. Maybe the one that comes along next fall or next, when the weather gets cold again is going to be different and not as what's the word I'm looking for here? Aggressive or whatever. Who knows? It's something we're probably gonna have to live with on some level. And I think, the more time goes on, the more we learn about this thing, the more precautions they can take and probably the less hysteria there will be about it. and it's, we're not hysterical about the flu. And I know people out there, it's not the flu, Pigskin Pete. This is something totally, I know. What I'm saying is we don't cancel everything because there's a flu outbreak, And so I think that it's going to go along those lines at some point.
Yeah. And every month that we go further, the treatments are getting better. The research for vaccine and all the cocktail of drugs they're putting together.
Yes.
Whatever, chug this, and then go to your football game,
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll get down that path. My number one question is, fine, let's play. Let's go for it. What happens the first time you get somebody's entire defense that has COVID? What can you do then? What are you supposed to do? Call timeout on the season and forfeit for a few weeks, or have all your bench warmers in there as starters?
That's what you're going to have to do if you don't want to cancel. Now, look at Kansas State right now has a bunch of players. Like half the team or something. I don't know the exact number. Not half the team, maybe, but a bunch, like dozens of players. I know Texas has had a real bout with it. They got a bunch of players that have tested positive. That actually might end up being, and I'm not dismissing the fact that this is a dangerous thing. And I hope these kids are all okay and all recover. But in the law, as far as football goes, it might be a blessing in disguise, because if it runs through that team now, then the chances of them getting it in 3 months from now is going to be slim to none. Right. So, these teams that don't have any cases now, they might be more worried about getting the cases later, if that makes any sense.
Look at you. I'm going to call you Pigskin Fauci from now on. I like that.
I do. I am the son of a doctor and a nurse.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah. So anyway, that doesn't make me a doctor or a nurse, but it is what it is.
So I don't know, man. It's just, but that tweet caught me off guard. And because Teddy Greenstein's a guy that he ain't talking to people like us, like you said, he's going into these administrations in the Big Ten and asking them what the hell's going on. So I don't know, but people can keep telling me, don't worry about it. These kids are young. Don't even worry about it. But every day. So go ahead and call me a snowflake that I'm concerned about this all you want.
No, there's nothing wrong with being concerned about it. But
look at the news. I'm just looking at the news. That's all.
Dr. Pigskin Fauci says there's at least a 70% chance that everything's going to be okay. So
all right. I'm going to hold you to that.
I'm going to take that to the bank. All right. So the next thing we want to talk about is something that we wanted to talk about at the end of last week's show, and we just ran out of time. I think this is interesting for not only for college football fans, but also for Notre Dame fans in particular, is the playoff expansion debate. And just like everything else in the world, and especially in college football world, there's people that absolutely are staunch about they don't want an expansion at all. They want to keep it at 4 games. A lot of people didn't even want the 4 games. They just wanted to keep it at the 2. Then you had the people that want the 8. Then you had the people that want 16. I've even seen people that want it to be like the NCAA tournament and want 64, which is absolutely insane, and won't happen either.
Yeah.
But how this affects Notre Dame's chances to make the playoffs, because as we said and debated in the first episode of the show about Notre Dame's independence and how they most likely, it's not set in stone, but most likely Notre Dame's going to have to go 12-0 most years to make the playoffs in the current format. If they expand to 8 games or 12 teams, not games, teams, 8 teams, 12 teams, or 16 teams, or whatever it is, that drastically increases Notre Dame's chances. And by the way, I want to say this, I was correcting you on how you said Clemson, right?
Yeah.
So last week, somebody in your comment section said, I'm pronouncing Notre Dame wrong. There's no D in Notre Dame. So touche. All right. Notre Dame.
Oh,
is what I should. That's what I should be saying.
Notre Dame. Sound really fancy. Get that French in you. Notre Dame.
I just wanted to acknowledge that. Yeah, I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. So Notre Dame. Anyway,
that couldn't be that. If it was bad, I would have noticed it to throw it back at you when you gave me the Z business.
Yeah, but you do. You say it like I say it. The Notre Dame thing. You even say it that way.
And by the way, we cover all this ground, do all this research, and everybody's favorite part of that episode was us going back and forth on how to pronounce Clemson. I know. That's just how it is, man. I know.
And the thing is, that's people outside of Clemson don't realize how much that's a thing, though. So anyway, I don't really get offended by it, but I thought I thought I'd
But I
call you
thought
out.
that was hilarious. That was everybody's favorite part.
Yeah.
So wait, just so big picture. There's no doubt more teams opens Notre Dame's window more. There's no doubt about that. Like I said, one loss Notre Dame's usually out in a 4-team playoff. If you expand it, no matter what you expand it to, that helps Notre Dame for an avenue with one loss to be able to make it, especially if it's not guaranteed spots to the conference winners, regardless of their record. That would definitely help Notre Dame. You got to be in it to win it. So if any of these expanded options is going to open Notre Dame's window to be able to do it with one loss. So I think for Notre Dame's perspective, that's how people are going to see it. I'm more interested in how this would be formatted, structurally, how you would host these games, how you would do the quick turnaround of, announcing them. And then if you're going to have home venues, I don't know how that would all be structured. Do you think it's a certainty we're going to expand when this TV contract comes up just because of money, if nothing else?
Yes, I do. When is that contract up? 2024 or 2025, something like that.
Yeah, it's a few more years.
Yeah. So there's nothing going to happen until then. I know people are screaming into their cell phones and into their keyboards, especially on a lot of my streams during the season. They need to playoff expand. Need to do it now. Do it now. It's not going to happen now. Look, it's just the way it is. It's not going to happen until the contract's up. That's 2024 or whatever. Once that happens, I do think you'll see an expansion. I personally don't want them to expand. I'm one of the ones that is on the fence about diminishing the regular season.
Well, now, okay, wait. Now let me ask this.
Mm-hmm.
The skeptic would say, easy for you to say because your team's getting in it every year. So why would you want to invite more teams in it? Right? Like, is that, do you think any part of that's because your team's in it now anyways?
No. I mean, I'm sure that people would make that assumption from the outside, but I'm just telling you as a college football fan that I just think that I want for every game to matter.
Yeah.
And that's just the way that I am as a college football fan.
Yeah. And that's why college football is great because it has the shortest regular season. So every single Saturday is a huge deal, unlike every 162 of your baseball team's games.
Right. Now, having said that, if it went to 6 or 8 games, I'm not, there's people out there that say if it goes to 8 games or something, it's going to ruin college football. It'll be unwatchable. Nobody will care about it. I'm not on that. I'm not that far.
Wait. How could having more teams having a chance to win a title diminish how many people watch and care? You're going to have all those other fan bases that are all bought in.
Right.
Those numbers are going to be crazy.
I agree.
They are.
There's people out there that feel like that it's a slippery slope. You start adding more teams. Yeah, maybe this next contract it'll be 8 teams. And then in 2032 or whatever, then it'll be 16. And they don't want it to end up like the NFL, where almost half of the teams get in to the playoffs. Right.
So where do you think
you have teams that are 500 getting in the playoffs?
Right. Where do you think the sweet spot is then if they do this, that you would be comfortable where it's pushing to that line but not across it? Do you think that's 8? Or
I draw the line at 8.
Okay. And that's kind of a number I had in my mind because then you get into, like you said, you're going to start rewarding some teams that certain years shouldn't probably get in.
Think about it like an SEC team, for instance. You can have a 3 or 4 loss SEC team if there's 8. I mean, conceivably, probably not, but conceivably get into the playoffs. A 3-loss team, maybe, that could still be ranked in the top 10. And that's the other thing. If you go to 16, forget about it. Then
I think, 16, I think is too much. I think that's too much.
Then what you start having is you have teams, if your only goal is to make the playoffs and you're already, let's say, 9-1 or 10-0 going into the last 2 regular season games, why not rest your starters?
Yeah.
Then you can lose a game and get in anyway.
Yeah. You're getting into the end of the NFL season, Right.
Yes.
So I agree with you. I think they can thread the needle, between not diminishing the regular season, also opening it up for more teams to get in. And I think they can thread that needle comfortably, but I think 16 even you're getting out of it. I think 8 could be your sweet spot there. And you know what else 8 does? 8 eliminates the committee I don't trust sitting in that room. They have more leeway, right? Because the gap between the 4th and 5th team's going to probably be more debatable than the 7th, 8th, and 9th team. So I think it's safer for that committee to include everybody they should than it is at 4. So I think it makes their job a little easier. Now then you're going to argue 9 versus 8. The first one out's always going to be mad.
Exactly.
But if you're 9, that means you have 2 or 3 losses probably if you're 9, and then you don't have an argument to me then.
The sweet, what I would like, if it's going to expand for me, I would like 6 teams. And then there's ways you can do that. You can have a bye, first round bye for the first 2 seeds or whatever it is. And so there's ways to do 6. I think that 6 is feasible. And then there's people that want all the Power 5 conference winners and one at large bid or something like that. I don't know if I go that route, because then who would have made the playoffs? Oh, I guess Oregon would have made it last year from the Pac-12. But of course, that makes Notre Dame have to get an at-large bid because they're not in a conference. Yeah.
See, I mean, if they went to 6 and did it that way, that's tough. Because I would be for the system they have now with the committee, but just instead of 4, have 6. Basically, is the way I would do it. I think I'm fine with that too. So my question would be, if they're going to investigate this, do they make that small incremental step from 4 to 6, or do they just dive right in, look at the TV revenue, figure it out, and say we're going to 8?
I'm saying they're going to go to 8.
You know what I like? If you're going to do this, you may as well go kind of big and double it, and then see how that goes for a contract's worth of TV.
If I think they'll go to 8, they'll just double it. And then now if for some reason they go more than 8 for whatever reason, politics or money or whatever, if they go 12 or 16, I will be severely disappointed if they do that.
I will. I think that's a stretch they're not going to go down. And then I think the logistics get tougher on you when you do it that much. I think 6 or 8 would be fine if it was a fair format, but I'm not buying into this. If you win a conference, you're automatically in, no matter how many losses you have. I am not buying into that. You got to earn your way. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to see a 3-loss team get a bid to the playoff. No.
Sure. Clemson beat a 5-loss Pitt a couple of years ago to win the ACC. What if Pitt would have upset Clemson and they would have been 8-5?
See, you
got in the playoffs? No,
you can't do that. Right. You can't do that. So I'm guessing, if I had to put money on it, I'm guessing if they're going to go down this path, they want to make some sort of a splash. They'll think 4 to 6 isn't a big enough splash, and I would put my money on 8. That's what I think.
That's where I think it'll land, and I won't be terribly upset with that. Even though I don't want it to expand 8, I'm not gonna freak out about that. Plus, I've already come to grips with the fact that I think it's inevitable anyway. So I've already pretty much just gotten over it. Well, even though it hasn't happened yet.
But Pigskin, it's money's money, and everybody wants more money, and so everybody loves college football. If you have more of these games and they matter, it's going to be a win for everybody.
And the other thing about this is the more teams that you add to the playoff, the more it diminishes the other bowls. It's already happened with the 4-team playoff. People are like disappointed about going to the Rose Bowl if it's not part of the playoffs. And what you asked me earlier, do I not want the expansion because Clemson's always in it and they have an easier, path to get there? And I said no. And I'm not one of these people, man. If Clemson doesn't make the playoffs, I don't look at the season as a complete disaster. Now, if they go 8-4, I'll consider it to be a disaster. But let's say they go 10-2 or 11-1 and just somehow miss the playoffs because there's 4 teams that are better. And then they go to whatever New Year's 6 bowl game and win it. To me, that's still an amazing season. I don't get caught up. Of course, I want them to go to the playoffs. Of course, I want them to win national championships. But that's not the standard. That's not like the only thing I look forward to.
Now, would your opinion on that be different if you guys don't have a couple championships in your back pocket recently?
No, I always listen. You got to understand. Before they won those 2 championships in the past 4 years, I was when they went to the Peach Bowl and beat LSU. I was at that game. I was ecstatic. That was a great. I was almost just as ecstatic about doing that as I was about them winning a national championship. Almost, not quite as much.
Yeah.
And when they beat Ohio State in 2000, what was that? 14, and the was it 2014 or 2013 maybe? Anyway, They beat Ohio State and Urban Meyer's, I think it was his first year there, in the Orange Bowl. That was a huge victory for Clemson. And that was, to me, an extremely successful season. I was not disappointed with that at all. They didn't win. They didn't fight for a national championship that year.
Yeah, that makes sense. Listen though, there's too many bowl games to begin with. I'm sorry, but I know more football's always good, but you get some of those bowl games are dogs, man. They're in bad weather climates. It's cold. It's miserable. It's 500 teams.
Yeah.
There's 1,500 people in the stands. I get it. Coaches want more time with their team, whatever. I get it. Guys get to play football more, fine. But there's already too many bowls. But you're right. It is turning into the playoff and then maybe a couple of the New Year's Six bowls, and that's pretty much it.
Right. And some of the people aren't even happy, like what happened with Georgia a couple of years ago when they played Texas. You had, because Georgia thought they were going to the playoffs. That was their hopes.
Yeah.
So they missed the playoffs. They still went to the Sugar Bowl, played Texas. A bunch of their key players sat out. The Georgia players didn't even show up. It seemed like they even wanted to play in the game. You're talking about the effing Sugar Bowl here. Like, this is one of the most prestigious football bowls in history, and they act like they didn't want to be there. And the fans acted like they didn't care either. And of course, Texas goes out there and mollywops them.
Yeah, well, they had no interest in being there because they were.
That's what I'm saying. That's terrible. That's terrible.
Yeah, it is, but I kind of get it though. At the same time, like, they didn't reach their ultimate goal, and then it's like, okay, whatever. And they, so should it be like that? Probably not. But I understand why it happened. They had no interest in playing that game, zero interest, and it showed.
That's sad though. They should. I mean.
Yeah, but that was collateral damage from going to this playoff system now, because those big bowl, think about the luster that's come off the Rose Bowl. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? That used to be the big thing, and now it's like whatever, kind of, And the other thing
that's my point.
The Rose Bowl, the other situation was they have that TV contract for that time slot for the Rose Bowl every year, but it's starting to interfere with the playoff plans. They want them to change that and kind of say, Rose Bowl, guess what? It's not as big of a deal anymore, and want them to move that time slot. So there's already collateral damage with some of these traditional big bowl games. And I mean, what are you going to do then if you expand the playoffs? Slap a name on one of those other bowl games and call it that? Or what are you going to do?
That's my point, because the more playoff teams you add, then the less significant all the bowls come. Now it's going to be, it's already bad enough that people are not getting excited about going to the Sugar Bowl or the Rose Bowl if it's not in the playoffs. But now it's going to be, if you don't make the play, if there's 8 teams, it's going to be completely screwed. Playoff or bust. Every other bowl doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get that. And people will say it doesn't matter, but if it's your team, you're still going to watch it. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to watch it, but you're going to, it's like me. Notre Dame went 10-2, played a 5-loss Iowa State team in the bowl game. You think I was excited about that destination and opponent? That's a lose-lose for Notre Dame. You beat them, you get no credit because they got a handful of losses. You lose, you get ridiculed. That was a no-win, but what was I doing? Sitting there stressing out about it all day. So I could say I don't like it, but I was all about, I didn't miss it.
I can say this with 100% certainty. The only way that the Gamecocks will ever have a chance to make the playoffs is if they go to 16 or 24 teams.
That's tough. That's tough.
So they want a playoff expand. Hell, they want a 64-team playoff.
That's tough. Dude, I can't believe people are realistically calling for even 16, I think is too much. Think of the teams are going to get in if they're 16th.
Yeah.
You're going to have four losses. I mean, come on. That's too far. That's way too far.
Yeah, and whoever the 16th ranked team at the end of last season was, I don't know who it was. They had no shot of winning a national championship.
No, I guarantee they had to have like 4 losses probably. And so you shouldn't have your hat in the ring for a championship with 4 losses. That's why I think 8 will be the sweet spot. Set up a TV contract for that. Figure out if you're going to do the first rounds to the higher seeds at home, then move it into these bowl venues, whatever you're going to do. I think 8's the spot there. I don't think they're going to do this and only do 6. They're not going to think that's progressive enough. I think 12, 16's too many. 8's the window to me.
John, there's a reason that Jim Harbaugh wants a 16-team playoff, sir.
Don't get me started with that lunatic. He's out of his mind. I don't understand what planet the guy lives on. He's weird. I don't get him.
He drinks milk with hormones in it. That's why.
Dude, he is the weirdest dude. Like,
he is.
I just don't get it. He's weird. Like, whatever. Yeah. We'll see.
We were talking last night on my stream, or was it last night, or I can't remember. All these days run together. I think it might have been last night. It was with Bobby Durkins on Tuesday. He told me the house from Home Alone, the movie Home Alone, in Chicago suburb is for sale. And I said, and he said, it's in a suburb and they're selling it for $1.6 million. And he said, but it's also right on Lake Michigan. That's what people don't know about that house. I said, hell, well, maybe Jim Harbaugh will buy the house. He's got the $1.6 million and he can use it to have sleepovers with his recruits.
Dude, that's so creepy. I am sorry. That's weird, man. But hey, I'm going to tell you what, though. For as weird of a guy as he is, he keeps landing solid recruiting classes. I'm not going to say they're top 3 or 4 or 5, but he's landing enough kids there. I don't know what he's doing.
Nobody does less with more than Jim Harbaugh. Right?
Yeah,
he's the opposite. He's the opposite of David Cutcliffe. David Cutcliffe, nobody does more with less than David Cutcliffe, and nobody does less with more than Jim Harbaugh.
That's fine, but I can only give Harbaugh a hard time to a certain extent, because if Notre Dame fans are honest about it, the last handful of years, Notre Dame and Michigan match each other pretty damn well in terms of getting to a point where they beat the teams they should beat. They play a couple teams with equal or better talent, and it's time. There's a lot of similarities there that overlap between those two programs. Lot of wins, but in those big games, both of them have fallen short. So I'm hesitant to go too hard on him,
especially after last year.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of overlap between those two programs in recruiting as well. They've been pretty darn neck and neck, beating the teams they should beat and then struggling with anybody equal or better. So I can't make fun of him that much. I just think he's a weird guy. Like, just interactionally, he's weird. Interviews, he's just a bizarre dude.
Yeah, he's definitely weird.
He's just weird.
My biggest criticism of him is I don't think he's a bad coach or anything. I think he's a pretty good coach, but he's a quarterback guy, and that's what he hasn't been able to recruit there. And so of all the positions, I mean, listen, the defense is the best part of that team, has been since he's been there, and he's an offensive guy. So that's my criticism of Jim Harbaugh is why can't you get an elite quarterback in there?
Yeah, and that's fair. And here's, man, that Ohio State thing. My question is, how does this shape up for Michigan? Okay, Harbaugh can win all these games, keep losing to Ohio State. Okay, you're 0-5 against them, then you're 0-6 against them, then you're 0-7 against them, whatever. Now, I think it's more likely Harbaugh leaves on his own and goes and does something else than them getting rid of him, because then they're still winning a lot of games, but not getting over the big hump. And the other problem is, philosophically, you brought Harbaugh in as your hometown guy, Michigan man, the returning prodigal son, Messiah. He's our everything, our homegrown guy. How do you get rid of that guy then? I think they box themselves in.
I disagree. I think that Jim Harbaugh will stay there as long as they'll let him.
You don't think internally he's going to say, I'm not getting over this Ohio State hump. I'm out of here. I'm going to go find something else to do.
No, I don't. I think he loves Michigan for obvious reasons. That's number one. Who else is going to pay him $8 million a year to coach their team, whether it's in the NFL or in college football? And I mean, as long as they'll keep him there, I think he'll stay there. I think he'll, before he leaves, he'll get fired, unless he just decides to retire and quit football altogether at some point.
Yeah. It's just a really, really interesting dynamic. And there are a lot of parallels with Notre Dame with them winning a lot of games, but not getting over the hump. I mean, if I was a Michigan person losing to Ohio State, chalk it in every single year, I would lose my mind. Like I wouldn't be able to handle it.
Yeah. I wouldn't either.
Tough.
But Ohio State fans definitely want him to have a lifetime contract, though. I know that much.
Dude, if he wasn't just such a weirdo, like, I don't know. His personality's bizarre.
He did almost beat Ohio State once. It was that controversial call at the end of the game. So I'll give him credit for that. But still.
Yeah, that's tough.
He's going into year 6 now. So, it's time to, poop or get off the pot, as they say.
Yeah, and actually those schedules for them are actually fairly tough. Like if you actually look at the grind, it's an actually pretty tough Big Ten schedule. So
oh yeah,
I'm interested to see what they're gonna do.
Yeah. All right. So the next topic at hand is this new thing. Well, semi-new. It's been in the works for a long time now. Is the payers being paid or earning money, I should say, not being paid, off of name, image, and likeness. Now, this is a very convoluted and very difficult thing to try to wrap your head around, because what we're seeing now is every individual state, started with California, right? Making a law saying in the state of California, college athletes can make money off of the name, image, and likeness. Then I don't know how many states have done it. Do you know how many states have done this now?
I know there's been, I think, 2 or 3 others that have come out and made similar proclamations. But how do you do this unless it's everybody? Because why would any kids go if you're not getting any money and you go here, you sign a couple autographs, they give you $100,000? How could those places compete? I don't get it.
Right. So in the running the risk of thinking that this is about politics, it's not. But it is in the news today or yesterday, maybe, that the state of Florida did something similar to what California did. So the senator from Florida is Marco Rubio, right? So Marco Rubio was on a radio show, I think today, and he said what you just said. He said it's great that each state's doing this on their own. He said, but that's going to screw everything up for the, if you're in Minnesota or you're in Ohio or you're in South Carolina and they don't have this same regulations as California or Florida, that's a massive disadvantage for those schools. So you need a federal, a blanket law for this, right? Or some sort of legislation federally, not just statewide.
Yeah, I don't see. So when the first thing about this I read came out of California, and it came out during the time COVID was really taking off. So because of all that, it didn't really get much attention. And I've had it in my notes as something to talk through and try and figure out more. And I understood that the NCAA initially wanted to resist this, but they
NCAA is so useless.
You know what? They legislate where they shouldn't, and they don't where they should. That's,
yes,
seriously.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they looked into it and realized going through federal appeals court and doing all of this would take years and years and years, tons of money and resources. And they kind of put their sword down and decided that's a fight not worth it. But then my question is, the bill itself from California was very open-ended. I mean, it wasn't saying you can only give a kid this many. It didn't address things like, okay, well, what happens with Title IX when the quarterback of Alabama gets $200,000 a year to show up at a car dealership, and the female soccer star gets $20 for doing the same thing? I don't know how those equality laws will shape up with this.
It's very difficult.
That's another question I have. And I just don't see how you could do this unless everybody does it. You're going to have massive disadvantages.
Sure.
They say in the original law from California, it said the NCAA did provide the guidance that you're not able to use this as a recruiting pitch.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay.
Now.
So,
I mean, if
that makes no.
What's stopping? Listen, there's already shady stuff going on in recruiting, especially like in basketball and stuff. But
basketball is way worse than football.
But we'll stick to football. If you start making it legal for Rick Hendrick Motors, or I'm just throwing a name out there, whatever car dealership, to pay Trevor Lawrence to come and sign autographs one day. And when they're recruiting Trevor Lawrence, what's to stop a multimillionaire Clemson booster from contacting the car dealership and saying, hey, I want to get Trevor Lawrence to come to Clemson.
Yep.
I've got $1 million that you can pay him. I'll give you the $1 million. You
Yep.
pay him as if you're the one paying him. Listen, it's opening up a Pandora's box.
Yep.
Let's be honest.
Yep. Absolutely. That's where my mind went too. Because you can say, here's the deal. You can say you can't use it in recruiting. It's going to get out that it's going to be known certain companies that are run by these power brokers and boosters and grads of these schools. It's going to be known if you're Notre Dame's best player, guess what? You make $100,000 to be the face of the car dealership. Like, so that's going to be out there. So here's my question. When I first let this sink in, I could see two different ways of thought that are totally divergent. One is you could say, oh boy, this is going to open Pandora's box. This is going to be a money grab. The best players are going to the top bidders now more than ever. This is bad for the game. That's thought one. On the other side of it, thought two is, well, wait a second. This kind of stuff's already going on. Does this level the playing field? Because now people that didn't have the bag man before and weren't playing that game can legally come in and offer these things. Does it level the playing field? So I could see this both ways. What do you think about that? They're two totally different trains of thought.
It's a really difficult thing because I do feel like that the players to some degree are being exploited, even though I think that they're not being exploited so much as that they still are college kids. They're students. They're amateur athletes. They're not professional athletes. So that's number one. You're a golfer. You know this. You're considered a professional golfer if you take one single dollar for winning a tournament. Just turn my microphone off. But anyways, it's a difficult thing, but I do think it creates a power vacuum for the richest people in the richest towns and the richest cities in the country. It just does. Now, for me, I don't have a problem. Like if they're going to say, especially a university or maybe Nike or some apparel company, if they're going to say, we're going to sell a football jersey that has XYZ's name on the back of the jersey, he should be getting paid if they're selling a jersey with his name on it. Absolutely. He should get whatever cut they agree to out of that. And that sort of thing. But this whole thing, I mean, there's just too many ways around this name, image, and likeness thing with doing commercials and endorsement deals with shoe companies and that sort of thing. These guys can end up making possibly $20 million in their college career, potentially.
Yeah. You're gonna, man, I'm just picturing these guys like T. Boone Pickens and like all the oil money and all these like, and here's how I think of it, my little Notre Dame world. Notre Dame's well known for all their alums that go on to start their own companies, be the CEOs, have all this money and they're all this business acumen. If you're the big cigar smoker booster, I'm putting together a program right damn now, sending it to the university and saying, we want to partner with you on this. Whoever your best player is, we're going to give him $200,000 to be the face of our dealership, our business, our whatever. And we'll figure out whatever he has to do. Sign a couple balls. Here's $200,000, whatever.
Think about Oregon.
Yep.
I mean, who's their biggest guy?
It's a built-in advantage because they have all Nike.
They have Nike money,
yep.
So they can say, listen, if you come to play at Oregon, you're getting a Nike endorsement deal worth $10 million.
Yeah,
day one. Now, tell me that's not an unfair advantage for Oregon in recruiting.
Yeah. See, man, this is tricky. And then you have Notre Dame's old athletic director before the current one, who's now at Duke. He came out and said he was all against this and this isn't what we represent and all that. The irony in that is the one and done factory that Duke basketball is, and all the Olympic ties, all of the jersey and shoe ties. Haven't they just proved that Zion Williamson got paid like $1 million to come play there or something like that? It is. I laughed my ass off when I saw that coming out of Duke because they're one of the last places that should stand up and be against this. When you're a one and done factory, you can't tell me it's all about the student athlete. There's nothing about being a student when you're playing one semester to shoot hoops and you're out of there.
Yeah.
Come on. So,
Zion Williamson was this close to coming to Clemson. and he
Was he
switched.
really? I did not know that.
Yeah, it came down to Duke and Clemson, and there was like, you know how they do those crystal ball projectors of where they're going to sign. He was like 70% or 80% like projected to come to Clemson, and at the last minute he flipped to Duke, and then we just found out a few weeks ago why is he was paid.
So this is really tricky for me because usually I'm very opinionated on everything and have a logical path, and I back it and go down. I don't know what to make of this because it seems like there's not a lot of structure. There's not a lot of guidelines. Maybe there will be some down the road. It doesn't seem like the NCAA is going to be able to track all this stuff. There's no way. So I don't know if it's just going to be the Wild West and more progressive programs and schools build a partnership with their alum base or their donor, the big cigar smokers, put together these programs. I just don't know how it's going to go, other than the one assurity I have is, like you said, the places with more resources, more powerful donor bases and alums, and they're going to be, you would think, in a good position.
That's why I would say,
right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I would say you need a federal legislation on this, that where all 50 states are under the same guideline, because the NCAA's, they're not going to do anything. They're basically saying they spent all this time saying it's not allowed, it's not allowed, it's not allowed, and now they're saying, but we're just going to act like nothing's going on. You guys figure it out. I mean, just like they're doing with the playoffs and everything else. They're just the NCAA is completely worthless. All they like to do is put sanctions on teams when they do screw up. They don't like to have anything to do as far as progressing the sport anyway.
Yeah.
But maybe the legislation says, hey, you can make money off of your name being put on a jersey or your likeness being put on a video game or something like that. But you can't take money from car dealers and you can't take money from Nike, stuff like that. I don't know. It's a very difficult, complicated thing to figure out.
And then even if you put a limit on it, like if you said nobody can offer you a kid $1 million or whatever, to do whatever,
it's still going to happen though.
Exactly. Like you're going to, say the number's $100,000. Here's your $100,000 check. And then the bag man comes in with the rest, just like they're already doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think this could be the Wild West, but in some ways we're already having that. And I don't know if teams that aren't doing the bagman stuff now will jump on board with this or not. I'm interested. It wouldn't surprise me if Notre Dame took we're not into this because we're about academics path. I could see them taking the high road on that,
So I had a conversation with, I don't know if you know who Billy Ratliff is. He was a defensive tackle for Tennessee during their 1998 national championship year. I had a conversation with him about this specifically because, of course, Clemson always gets accused of the bag man. They're paying these players who would go to Clemson. They got to be paying these guys, whatever. So I asked Billy,
why?
Directly,
what's wrong with Clemson? Like why wouldn't you want to go to Clemson?
Exactly. It's an amazing college town.
Yeah, and it's in a nice area. I don't see why people wouldn't want to.
Well, the trolls out there. Yeah. But anyway, so I asked Billy straight up. I said, look, man, you played major college football for a national championship team when Tennessee was an absolute powerhouse. I said, how prevalent is this bagman thing? I mean, how prevalent is the recruiting up, these kids getting offers, getting offered a bunch of money to come to their schools? He said, it's really not that prevalent. Yes, it does happen. It's not near as prevalent as people think it is. And so, yes, there's always going to be corruption in any sport. You're always going to have the outliers. But like he said, it's just, it's sort of this fantasy thing where people think that every team that's good, they bought all their players, right? It's just not the way it works. And so I think that once you open up this bag of worms, though, with the name, image, and likeness thing, even though I'm not opposed to it, it definitely opens up the door for more corruption than there already is. Yeah,
I just think there's a lot of open-endedness to this, like lack of structure, to where, to me, it just seems like do whatever you want at this point now. So
right,
I don't know. Then the bigger part, wrapping this all together, it makes me feel like this conference realignment stuff that's being talked about links into some of this urge for these schools to want to break away from the NCAA's power. I think that's behind a lot of this. I think a lot of people are not respecting the NCAA anymore because they don't deserve it. They're not good at their jobs. They focus on the wrong stuff at the wrong times. And I feel like people are saying, forget them. We're just going to go around them and do what we're going to do. And this is all a part of wanting to get away from the NCAA. I think these Power 5 institutions are sick of them, and they're just kind of going around it. And the NCAA has less power as we keep going here, which I kind of like.
Yeah.
I just don't know where it's going to end.
I don't either. I have a feeling. Well, we already know that this is going into effect, whether people like it or not. How it's going to look, we don't know. But I think what did they say? Starting 2022, or is it 2021 or 2022?
I think it was 2 years out from now, 22 maybe.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I'm not a legal expert, but all that Title IX stuff with equality with athletes, I thought that was kind of like a big law or a big deal. I don't know how you get around justifying the top quarterback at a top football school making all this money and then everybody else isn't. I don't know legally how that all works or if it doesn't matter. But I know even just with resources given to women's sports, that's a big deal with Title IX compared to the men's revenue generating sports.
Right.
I don't know how this is all going to work.
Yeah, it's as I said, it's very complicated. And that's why there needs to be one blanket set of rules or legislation nationally for everybody to adhere by. Because if it just goes state by state, it's going to be. I mean, listen. If you're Alabama, Alabama football is Alabama, right? There's no professional sports teams in Alabama, just like in South Carolina, there's no professional sports team. So, South Carolina could legislate differently than in Alabama to make it where it's easier for them to funnel money to their players than it would for a Syracuse in New York or something where they don't care about football as much.
Yeah, but we've covered 2 topics today that are all over the board. You're looking at the COVID stuff, school to school, state to state, region to region, going to be all over the board. Now you look at this and you already have different states doing things. It feels like it's going to be harder than ever moving forward to find equity that's a baseline of fairness across everything. And I just don't know how this stuff's going to work out because it's complicated. Every angle you turn, there's another question that has to be dealt with.
So how do you feel personally about it, John? I mean, do you think that it has a chance to ruin the sport, or are you just sort of like me, where like you're just like, hell, I don't know, it's too complicated to figure out?
Personally, I mean, when you ask me personally, then I'm going to go back to a Notre Dame perspective.
Okay.
And my immediate thought is we're not going to be in the game for the bag man for the very, very top players anyways, because we never are. Your hat flippers, we're not going to be in that game anyways. So Notre Dame's not going to be able to play that game to the extent some others do. I do like the idea. So I'm not worried about that. Let them, the people that are already doing it, let them fight it out for more money for the top guy under the table. It's not going to affect Notre Dame anyways. We're not in the mix for those players. Many of them couldn't get into school there anyways. So that's a non-starter to me. But what I do think is unique is if you're Notre Dame and you're smart, I would be pulling in a way to make these partnerships, but make it more than just a kid signing an autograph at a folding table at a car dealership. Make it something a little more involved with a business angle to it. Give the kid some money and some life experience overlapping with a Notre Dame grad or booster that is successful. That's a good recruiting pitch. You're 40 for 40. You're going to have the Notre Dame degree. The NFL, if you're good enough, that's an option coming out of Notre Dame. And oh, by the way, you're going to be able to make a good chunk of change to send home to mom and dad, get yourself through school, learn a little bit more about businesses, make some Notre Dame connections with alumni that are high up in these businesses. So for Notre Dame, if they leverage this right, they have all the resources and money and power they need to be able to use this how they want. But Notre Dame's not going to be, they're not going to deal with the bag man for those top kids and get in a bidding war. That's not the angle I want them to take with this. But if they leverage it right, I think it could be a useful tool.
I got you. It's like,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It does. And every fan from every school is going to have a different perspective. Like for me, Clemson, I know there's a bunch of rich Clemson boosters that could easily funnel money if they had an avenue to do that.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, as far as a business sponsoring a player, like Clemson's such a small town, there's no like huge car dealership where this guy's like like you'd find in Chicago or in Dallas or something like that. So the amount of money those guys could afford to pay the player would be minuscule anyway. But then you have the booster, like I said. They can say, well, I'll give you the money. And so it's the whole thing screwed up. And but if you're able to do something, if they're able to get endorsement deals, you might as well just go ahead and say Oregon's going to win 9 out of the next 15 national championships with Nike money.
Yeah.
They're going to buy all the talent.
Yeah. I don't know. You're going to have those imbalances. And what can you do? I mean, Phil Knight's an Oregon guy. Like, what are you going to do? Like,
and I do want to say this. I don't think that every kid is out for that anyways. Like, I think it's unfair to the player to say, oh, you're just after the money. So there's a lot of players out there that they're just, they're not interested in getting the payday in college. They just actually want to go to get a degree and have a great college experience and play college football and see where it goes from there. So every family is not just money hungry, wanting the biggest paycheck. That's not how, I think that there's a lot more players that actually do just want to go play football and have a good, get a good education than the flip side of that.
See, that's another thing I've been running through my brain is, what would be the percentage of kids this scenario would actually apply for? You get what you know what I mean? Like, I think it would be pretty small overall. You know what I mean? Like, how many guys you going to have that are face brand recognition names like Zion was, and so the percentage of people this affects overall, I don't know. But I do think this is an interesting opportunity for some of these big cigar smoking boosters. Instead of just throwing money in a pool and then the department decides where it goes, come up with a creative partnership program and put something together, approach the university and say, I want to help you guys out. I have the resources. I want to bring these guys into my business, have them learn a little bit about it. And it's kind of a win-win-win in that way.
Yeah,
but
right.
I just don't think the percentage of kids this applies for is that big.
You're talking almost like a paid internship or something.
I would like something more involved. If it's Notre Dame, something more involved than just sitting there signing and then you get money or whatever. I think Notre Dame would like to set up something where there's some business side to this that ties in with the educational path.
Sure.
Not a full-time internship. The starting quarterback, Notre Dame doesn't have time for that. I'm not saying that.
But maybe during the offseason, though.
Something where it's more than just sitting there signing or showing up, shaking hands and getting a check.
Right,
something a little more substance.
Yeah, right. I got you.
And then I think that would make it more palatable for the holier than thou Notre Dame people that are not going to like this idea. If you made it more involved and more of a learning experience too, not just all about cutting a check to get a good guy.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the comments on this one because this, the name, there's two things. We talked about two things tonight that gets college football fans really riled up and passionate. That's the playoff expansion thing and the name, image, and likeness thing. And I understand both sides of both arguments. So I'm not like one of these like radical people like, oh, no, it's got to be this way or you're wrong or whatever. I understand. It's just a very difficult thing. But do you have anything to add? I can't believe it's already been an hour. It feels like we've been talking for 5 minutes.
I know every week it goes by quicker. But no, I agree with you. And it's an awkward place for me to be because I'm usually so opinionated, know exactly what my thought is. On all these topics, it's like I can kind of see a lot of different angles here and I'm open to it. I just hope the people who do make these decisions think things through so we don't do something and have unintended consequences on the back end that take away from where we're trying to go. So I don't know. We're just going to have to see.
There's always pros and cons to everything. And there will certainly be some sort of negative fallout from any of these decisions. But does the good outweigh the bad? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. And the other thing is, and you're seeing this too, it seems like these college players are starting to kind of reclaim or claim for the first time a little more power and say than they ever had before in this dynamic between coach, player, school, team. It seems like that's a trend. And I don't know how that's going to play out, but you're seeing these kids are speaking out more and they're getting more power, and that leverage all these big, rich old coaches had is less. It's getting to be less. And I want to monitor what that transforms into down the road.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Just in the past couple of months, especially in the past few weeks, there has been a huge power shift.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely.
And that could end up going a bunch of different ways. I'm really interested to see, but these kids are starting to feel like they have more power to speak up and say and do, demand things and talk about things. And that's going to be the trend. And we'll just have to see how that plays out.
Listen, they got Mike Gundy stuttering and drooling into his breakfast cereal.
Yeah, that looked like a hostage video when they were both up there together. The kid didn't want to be there. It looked like it was, man, that's rough.
Yeah, we won't listen. That's a good time to end the show. We won't even get into that. I've already pissed enough people off. Somehow on these issues, I tend to piss off people from both sides. I have a talent.
That's how you know you're balanced, when you're pissing off both sides.
Exactly. I have a talent. To piss everybody off.
We can end the show so you can put on your OAN t-shirt. So that's fine. That's fine. Go ahead.
All right, guys. It was fun. We'll see you guys next week. It's been fun. Thanks, John. See you next week.
Take care.
Buddy.
See ya.
All right.